Welcome to the Reimagine You Lab podcast. And you guys know me. I am MG, the Reimagine strategist. And of course, when we enter into the lab, it is always those tests, those hypotheses that we run, but we're always dealing with change. And you know what? I've got change agents that show up, those witty, wise men and women that come in here and share with me and share with all of you the real things that happen and that we can do, and ultimately share and show us that change is possible, because change is only a choice. And today in the lab, I have the amazing stress management and historical trauma specialist, Elizabeth Kipp. Elizabeth, welcome to the lab.
Oh, thank you so much, MG. It's great to be here.
I am so glad that you are here today. Now, I tell everybody, and all of the audience knows that I always go beyond the bio. Whenever I bring a guest in, I always ask them, hey, Elizabeth, tell them who you are, my dear. Give them those highlights, those high things. Where are you? Tell us a little bit about what they can expect to hear from the expert, the subject matter, the change agent that's sitting in the seat today. Give them a little bit of background.
Awesome. Thank you so much, MG. So I am Elizabeth Kipp. I live in Lawrence, Kansas with my cat, Lacey. It's a beautiful town.
Yes.
It's a college town, but it's also an artist and spiritual space. So it's a sweet place to live. I'm a chronic pain management, stress management, historical trauma specialist. I work as an addiction recovery coach. I'm an ancestral clearing practitioner. It sounds like a yoga teacher, meditation teacher. It sounds like a lot of stuff, but it's all under stress management and historical trauma, all of it. I help people who are trying to heal. And my little bit of the backstory there is that I suffered with chronic pain for over 40 years. The doctors, their answer was opiates and benzodiazepines, which is an anti-anxiety medicine. And I was on those for 31 years. The last 15 years of that was fentanyl and Ativan. So you're not going to find too many people that were on fentanyl for 15 years and still alive.
Right. I was going to say, you made it through, girl.
I'm like, and I don't, that's a whole thing right there, is just how kind of I pinch myself that I'm still here. I know I have a mission because, and it's a sacred one because of all that. Finally, 10 years ago, I was able to heal. I found somebody who really understood the nature of chronic pain and was able to detox me off of all that stuff and help me heal. And so I now help other people who are in that corner, right? Yeah. Where they're, where all they have is their wits. And I'm here to say there's tools.
There are tools,
right?
No.
So, I really wanted to come on this podcast because I love the reimagining.
Yeah.
Because for me, the doctors for years, until the last one I met, they all said, you will be in level 7 out of 10 pain 24/7 for the rest of your life. And you will be in a wheelchair when you're 40. And I knew, because I have a science background, I knew they were operating in a scientific paradigm, and
they're practicing,
and that they'd forgotten their basic science, because you're not a fortune teller. They didn't say the odds are, they said you will. But science is not about facts, it's about probabilities.
Yes.
So they'd kind of forgotten the limitation of the scientific model. And where we heal, we live in the all that is. We heal in the all that is, not just in the part that science can observe, measure, and describe, which can only comment on that which it can observe, measure, and describe. But we live in the all that is, not just in that part. So that was what got me through that understanding. I had to reimagine my life beyond what they were telling. And I'm not dissing doctors. I'm dissing the model they were trained under, which
Yeah.
which is changing.
Yeah.
It's changing now, but
Yeah.
at the time, that was their limitation.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Anybody can provide a schema, right? A framework, an idea. But ultimately, you decide how that's going to live out for you. You know
That's
what
right.
I mean? Like
You said that beautifully.
ultimately you get to reimagine, that's why they always say, even when you see doctors, hey, get another opinion, like get another opinion. And sometimes it may be get 10 or get however many it's going to take. But ultimately, you get to decide what that treatment program is going to be for you that you agree to.
Yeah.
And you get to determine, hey, how do I want to live or walk this out? What's that process going to be like for me? And so I'm glad that you made a decision,
Mhm.
and you changed. Again, change is a choice. You get to choose what it is that you want to do or what you want to believe, what you want to walk through. You get to make that decision.
Well, I yes and no. What
Mhm,
I learned in that experience, sitting in
mhm,
front of so many um, different kinds of healers, it wasn't just kind of Western doctors, but all different
yeah,
kinds of healers. What I learned was when I'm sitting in front of someone, I have to remember everybody has a perspective,
mhm,
and we have our scope of practice,
yeah,
and that creates some blinders for us. Now,
mhm,
remember, we live in the all that is, which is everything's possible.
mhm,
But when you're sitting in front of a healer, they have a perspective and a scope of practice. So I sit in front of someone and I'm like, what is it that they bring to the table that can benefit me?
mhm.
And what is it that they can't bring to the table because of their scope of practice? So that I'm
Yes.
very
Mhm.
clear about my expectations when I walk in the room
That's
about
good.
what this person can offer me and what they can't.
Yeah.
That took some education and some work in the trenches of the medical system to like actually
Yes.
get there, which is another reason why I like to come on podcasts to bring that messages because that
Mhm.
messaging so people
Yeah.
can actually take some feel more empowered when they're in the medical
Yeah.
system.
I like that. I want you to say that again because you said number one is, people have a scope of practice, right? Whoever's before you have a scope of practice and a
Huh.
perspective.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
that's a limitation.
That's a limitation.
Yeah.
And what are the two things that you use when you know that you're going in and there's that perspective and scope of practice, that's the limitation. What are your two?
Yeah.
Give us those again. What
Yeah. So the first thing is, what can they bring to the table?
what
What
can
are
they
they bring?
bring to the table? Mm-hmm.
What can they offer me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What
And
can they offer me? I love that.
the second thing is, what is it they can't offer me?
Mm-hmm.
So that I'm very clear on. There's nothing worse than having it. Well, there are things that are worse, but it's really a problem. It creates suffering if we walk into a doctor's office or any healer's office and we have an expectation for something beyond what they can actually give us because we're already let down because of our condition, right?
Yeah.
There's enough
Yeah.
let down already. But when we walk in with this big expectation, oh, they're going to do whatever, they're going to do this, or they're going to do that, or they're going to give me this, or whatever, and that doesn't happen, then we get this big letdown, and that's not healing. That puts us back
Right.
in suffering. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very important to get clear. That's why I emphasize that.
Yeah, no, I think that's so vital because, and we always want to make sure that people have these nuggets, these good takeaways when they come in here, they're learning something from the guests. So guys, girls that are listening in, I want to make sure that you guys got that. That's heavy. So before we jumped on, we were talking about this trauma, and sometimes you get a diagnosis, and that diagnosis is traumatic, right? Like that, it leads to
Mhm.
it's impactful, but I want you to tell me, I want you to share with the audience that quote that you just shared with me just a few minutes ago that
Okay.
I thought was so good. I was like, I got to make sure that we get that in here because
Yeah.
I know that there are people that are dealing with trauma, and you and I are gonna have another conversation. We're gonna have a whole podcast that's just gonna deal with
Yeah.
trauma because I know you do some work in that area as well.
Mhm.
But read that quote again.
I will. I will. But I wanted to just say um, before that that we have to be very careful about the difference between a diagnosis and a
Mm-hmm.
prognosis. So a diagnosis is, oh, I have a broken bone in my back and and it's
Yes.
split in two and it's, which is actually true in my case. And it slipped forward, 80% into the front of my back and, pulling the leg nerves and, that's the
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis.
Yeah.
The prognosis, all bets are off. They can get that. That's when they were saying, oh, you would, because of this condition that we see, you
Mm-hmm.
will be this way. That's the prognosis. They
Yeah.
didn't say the
Future
odds
state.
are. They
Mm-hmm.
said you will. Where there was no room for hope in there, and there was no room for like maybe something else is possible.
Change.
Like it
Mm-hmm.
was just that was traumatic. The diagnosis was like the diagnosis. The prognosis, that was traumatic to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm just putting that out there so that there's a distinction between the diagnosis. So I listen to the diagnosis. I don't buy into the prognosis.
Yeah. And that's key. I'm glad that you made the distinction between the two, because I think that is so important, because oftentimes it is a prognosis. Sometimes you get a diagnosis and before someone else gives you what the prognosis can be, you determine in your own mind.
I know. And then we're off to the races into some serious suffering.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
a lot of people don't go to the doctor to get a diagnosis because they've already assumed what the prognosis is.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you
That's
know?
a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were talking about trauma
Trauma.
and
Mhm.
context,
Yes.
right? Trauma and context. And it was so interesting that this came in because today I saw this beautiful quote from my friend Hala, who put up this quote on Instagram from Resma Minicum,
Mhm.
who said, "If something traumatic happens to you, the march of time will decontextualize it. Trauma in person over time can look like personality.
Mhm.
Trauma decontextualized over time in a family can look like family traits. And trauma decontextualized in a people can look like culture."
Mhm. Man, I thought that was, that there's a lot in there, right? There's a lot in that.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I just want to say that my big message is that the greatest healer lives inside you. The greatest
Yes.
healer in your life is inside. It's this beautiful intelligence in every cell and every atom of the body. It's in there.
Yes.
And we are here. We come in with we have our own individual stuff that happens to us. And we have stuff that happens within the family. And
Mhm.
we have stuff that happens um, uh, in the community,
Mhm.
in the
Mhm.
culture, and in the collective, and over time. That's why I do ancestral clearing work.
Mhm.
Because from a quantum, and I'm going to get a little bit spacey here, from the quantum point of view,
Mhm.
we access past, present, and future all at once. So we're not only connected in the present moment, we're connected through everybody through time.
Mhm.
So our ancestors are here with us. Their influences are here with us.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So collective trauma stuff that happened to our ancestors that's unresolved. It gets passed down into the system, into through the DNA through us, but it's also in the field.
Yeah.
This is what Resma was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? When you, and speaking about that, I think something that's important to bring up is that, we take a lot of ownership in, and naturally, like, it's not even because it is in the field and in the energy, and it shows up, just like Resma was saying there, it shows up in personality or in family traits and behaviors. It shows up, potentially as culture, right, in a family. And one of the things that we had said, and why I wanted to bring it up on the call was, or on the podcast, was because we have normalized trauma to such a degree that the things that have impacted us continue to perpetuate because we haven't necessarily learned how to deal with it, which is why an Elizabeth Kipp, and the work that she does with the people that she helps, makes such a difference in the lives of people. When I think about, a Michelle Gines and a Reimagine You, a lab podcast, or a coaching client that I work with, that says, hey, you know what, I want to do something different. Michelle God says, hey, I want to do something different, and I can. And it's because I've made a decision in mind first that, hey, that it's possible,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so there were things, you kind of get out of people pleasing. You get out of some of the things of, oh, well, because, like, when I was thinking about this conversation that we were going to have, and what I was thinking about, I've worked in corporate culture, and in the corporate, there is stressful. I tell people often that I've worked on what feels like, or what would be the semblance of a Navy SEALs type of a team. And there's constant work from multiple cross-functional teams, and it is constant, like, where it is, the growth is unsustainable, the workloads are unsustainable. There's other parts of teams that get laid off, and so then you've got the attrition of more work, less people to get work done, and that's just normal. So you think that you've got to work faster, you've got to work harder, and it's stressful. And so I think about, okay, here I am wanting to do great work, have been a people pleaser, right? Had a grandmother who died, who didn't die, but had a stroke at 47 years old. I was in the 4th grade, and my grandmother was like my mom, because my mom worked. And so I spent more time with my grandmother. And so when I think about, oh my God, Michelle, you need therapy, girl. Like there's been work that I've had to do.
Sure. Yep.
In order to, but all of these things, on one hand, it's like I'm conditioned to wanting to work like this, wanting to, be in situations where it's that kind of pressure. You're used to it. But at the same time, it's kind of like, hey, I know that that this kind of pressure is really too much, and what the outcomes and consequences can be when you're under that kind of pressure too often, too long.
Oh yeah, you're talking about chronic stress, and we're not made for that.
We're not.
We're really good at stressful situations that resolve fairly quickly. But chronic stress, which would be chronic pain, is 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, it doesn't matter what kind of the pain. It's all sending the same signal to the brain. It hurts.
Yep.
So the brain can't tell the difference between a broken bone and a broken heart.
It doesn't.
Right. So you've got this chronic stress. The stress response is in the on position, and it doesn't come off. It gets stuck. Yep. And we're not made for that. We're made for it to kind of come on and come off, and it doesn't happen. And the brain, which lives in the now, is highly adaptable, and it's changed by that experience. And so anybody who's listening to this, who's a chronic pain sufferer, knows that they suffer from brain fog. I can't think straight. There's confusion and a very distinct negative mind. Oh, I can't get this done. I'm not good enough. You're bad. Like
self-defeating.
A lot of negative. That is hallmark chronic pain stuff. So because the emotional part of the brain is quite affected by that. So we're not made for chronic stress. And one of the things that I do is I've actually created a workshop, which is, being taught to master's levels and mental health students to help them have the tools so they don't suffer from burnout.
Yeah, that, and you know what, and that is so important. So like that is, and we'll have a we'll chat even further, because I think that is the thing that is so important, because a lot of times people, again, we've normalized these types of things. And we don't call that trauma, right? We don't call stress overtime. Like we wait until there's a condition, some type of a traumatic experience that has halted you before we actually make change or do something about it. And I was like, you know what? Reimagine You was developed because I said, I don't want something to happen to me before I do something different.
Exactly. So let's just because we're on the topic, and let's just get super clear and define trauma.
Yeah, let's do it. How do you define it, Elizabeth?
So I love the definition that Dr. Gabor Mate gives.
Okay.
Trauma is not what happens to you. It's what happens inside of you because of what happens to you.
And what happens inside of you because of what happens to you.
And trauma is not, again, it's not about the hurt that you experience. It's about being alone with the hurt. You're alone with the hurt. So imagine you're working on a corporate team and you're on a deadline, and you're working as a team for this deadline, but your particular job is your particular job on the team. And you're having an issue with getting your job done. And you know that if you don't get your work done in a timely manner or in the correct manner, then the whole team is going to suffer, and the whole company will suffer. Like that kind of pressure. The thing is, you're alone with that. If you're alone with that and you don't have a safe space to talk about, I don't think I can get this done, or I'm worried that I'm going to mess it up, or I'm feeling so much pressure, I don't know what to do. If you don't have anywhere, a safe place to talk to somebody about that, you're suffering from trauma, and you're disconnecting. And in that state, the nervous system is dysregulated and you can't think straight.
Yeah.
So you wonder why teams in corporate, since we brought that up, so why teams have this issue. Deadline, people have to perform, they get performance anxiety. Why is that? Right? It's because they're alone with their worries. They don't have a safe space to. So this is one of the things that I really am hoping, that where trauma will start, not just in between like an individual and a therapist in a doctor's office and a therapist's office, but it'll become mainstream in corporate world, so that they're actually incorporating the basic skills around what trauma really is and how to avoid it, or if it shows up, how to actually heal it. We experience trauma in an unsafe relationship, and in order to heal it, we have to be in safe relationship.
Yeah. You know what? That is so critical. And I think about that when as you were speaking, it reminded me of the, like we're in dis-ease, right? And so when you think about that, I remember talking to my coach, a few years ago, and she was saying, like, Michelle, there, it causes dis-ease in your body and disease. That's, like, that's how
Exactly.
people get sick. That's,
Exactly.
like, it causes physical
Mhm.
symptoms,
Yeah.
it causes physical pain, and so you do, like, there is importance to taking care of ourselves, because nobody's going to be the advocate for you. A lot of times we're advocates for our children, we may be advocates for our spouse, and for others, but a lot of times you have to advocate for you. You hear a lot of
Mhm.
talk about self-care, and people think that's going to get my nails done and getting a massage, and it's so much more intricate
Mhm.
than that.
Yeah.
It's making sure that you take your brain health. It's making
Yeah.
sure that you get good sleep, like it. And if there are things that are interfering with you being in optimal condition,
Mhm.
if you're stressed, if there's some trauma, some historical trauma you need to deal with, if there's some anxiety and things that, chronic pains, as Elizabeth is talking here, reach out. Like, the worst thing we could do is sit alone with it.
That's right. That's right. We're just re-traumatizing ourselves. That's just sitting in a place of suffering.
Yeah,
Super
unnecessarily,
important.
because there's help out there.
Yeah, there's help out there, but here's the thing. I don't know about you, but I have a suspicion that it may have been like that for you.
Hmm.
Certainly women, um, in my life, I mean, from when I could get up and walk, I was put
Hmm.
into service. That was
Oh
like,
yeah.
that was the deal. So, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with service, but I'm telling you that the subtext of that was everybody else gets served first and I get served last. And
Absolutely.
that did not serve me well. That
It
was one of the
doesn't.
reasons I was in chronic pain for so long, was that I had it backwards.
Yeah.
Everybody, we have to fill our cups first and everyone else gets the overflow.
Yeah.
And
It's
I had to learn that, and that's not the way we're raised. So, and I'm not saying that our parents are wrong or anything, just saying, like, they got by on their
was
way.
conditioning.
They
Yeah.
right. It's the way, that's what they knew.
Hmm.
Right.
It was that culture. It's that, it goes back to
All
that
of it.
quote, doesn't it?
It does. It goes back to, absolutely it does. I mean, think about our ancestors. They had they had like they didn't have time for conversations like this because they were too busy just surviving.
Right.
that was that was their
Yeah.
that was their thing, and
Yeah.
that's running in our DNA and in our bones.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
when people say, "Oh, I don't know how to slow down," well, we've got generations and generations and generations that are working hard, working hard, working hard, and our society is faster and faster. So when you ask somebody to sit still for a meditation, you better be careful how you do that because they're going to freak out.
Mhm. Yeah, and most people can't do it.
Yeah,
Like,
you
you
have to
you have
do
to
that
you have to
slowly.
learn and gradually,
Yeah,
like,
you got to
over time,
retrain.
practice it. Yeah, like
You have
you have.
to retrain the nervous system, and there's
Yeah,
tricks. I use tricks to kind of help cajole that. But
yeah.
one of the things, again, with the trauma, we have a trauma response, which is to be very still. So you take somebody who's got trauma in their system and you ask them to sit still in a meditation. What have you just done? You've put them in the freeze response and you've just, you can have it can trigger stuff. So
Mhm.
it's not a good it's not optimal to do that.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
like to start with chanting and a little bit of movement so
yeah.
that the body has something to do, but you're using kind of like a mantra, a
Hmm.
repeated sound, and it lulls the mind and calms the body because we're
Hmm.
chanting, and then we can ease into that's a kind of meditation, and that's a very safe kind of space. That's why I
Yeah,
do trauma-informed yoga. That would be part of a trauma-informed yoga class. Yeah.
yeah. No, I love that. I love that, Elizabeth, because, and people need that. And they and most of the time, people sometimes are skeptical about things that they just don't understand, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But it's almost like I was telling, I talked to a lot of people, but I was telling a friend of mine just last night at dinner because she was telling me that she has the hardest time sleeping, and I was like, you probably have a hard time shutting your brain down. Like your brain probably is constantly
Could be, yeah.
going.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could
And
be.
she's like, oh yeah, like I'm constantly like when I get up, I may go to the restroom and then and it takes me a while to fall back to sleep because I'm thinking about what I need to do and what my day is going to be like and this and that. And I'm like, you really have to train your brain even to go to sleep.
Well, you can actually shortcut. You can move right past the mind
Mm-hmm.
by accessing the nervous system through the breath.
Yep. Breath
So
work.
you just cover your right nostril and breathe through the left nostril only, long, slow, and deep. With
Mm-hmm.
the exhale as long or longer than the
Longer.
inhale.
Mm-hmm.
That stimulates breathing in the left side like that stimulates the calming center in the brain. And
Yeah.
3 minutes of that, and the nervous system will get the message, oh, and you'll feel the and the mind follows the nervous system.
Love
So if
that.
you've got a busy mind, it's because your nervous system's charged up, and you got to start there. There's like a hierarchy to the healing, and you have to start with the nervous system. Then you have to feel like connected. Then you can think about the mind stuff, and the mind follows the nervous system.
Oh, I love that. That's so good.
Isn't that
So
cool?
good. That is cool. I like it. I love this. I love this. See, when guys, I know that you are listening in and you're just soaking up all of this good stuff. Elizabeth Kipp, stress management, historical trauma specialist in the lab today. I'm telling you, you're just going to get gems and nuggets because that's what she's been here sharing all this time. So, Elizabeth, I know that when I think about, like the biggest change that ever changed you, and I think you may have said it, but what would you say is the biggest change that ever changed you?
Yeah, the biggest one for me was instead of looking out there at the doctors and the healers and the wherever for my healing,
Mm-hmm.
I actually learned, the greatest healer in my life is in every cell and every atom of my body.
Mm-hmm.
In
How
here.
did you get there? How did you get there? How did you make that discovery?
Well, as I said, I had the science background, but I've got a foot in the science world and I've got a foot in the spiritual world. And I had
Mm-hmm.
this crazy prognosis, which was like, this is going to be your life. And I like rebelled.
Resisted it.
I got, I got very, I got very upset for a while, and then I got mad.
Yes. Yes. And rightfully so.
and
Rightfully so.
I realized I was going to have to go beyond the Western medical model, which meant beyond the doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, what would that even be? And so I was like, well, that's the universe. That's consciousness. That's the creator energy. And then I was like, well, where's that? Well, God is everywhere. So there's nowhere God isn't. And that
Mm-hmm.
means it's right here. And I didn't realize that all the healers in my life, they weren't doing the healing. They can set a bone or stitch up a wound, but they can't tell the body how to heal. Only the body knows how to do that, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So they can guide us to optimize our behavior and all the input that we're giving to the body, environmental, food, all of it. But it's up to us
Mm-hmm.
to actually follow those orders, or not, depending on whether they make
Yeah.
sense or not. And then we get out of the way and let the body do the work.
Yeah.
And that completely shifted everything. Instead of me just looking, oh, this guy, is he going to help me? This person, they're going to heal me? Mm-mm. They're guides. And then we use the word healer, but the healer is actually within. And when I really understood that in my bones, my life changed. I relaxed. And that was just having that realization helped me heal on its own. And again, I didn't have these weird, um, outrageous expectations of the healers I was sitting in front of anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That got right sized, and I became more right sized, and it was very balancing. So it was really profound.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that that's critical because I think that we do have to take ownership in our own well-being. And I think when we do that, it makes the most difference. Like um when Elizabeth, when Michelle makes the change, makes the decision that, hey, I want to be well, you know, and what will it take for me to be well? Not just what someone is telling me, but what is it that I'm going to have to do?
Mhm.
And what does that look like? And if the God of the universe can tell me how to heal this body, what does this body need to
Mhm.
be enriched? How do I tap into that nervous system with my breathing that's
Mhm.
going to settle my mind and enable me to be able to sleep? That is
That's
start
right.
there. You know
And
what I
then
mean?
I can heal. Yeah,
Yeah,
you got it. You got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like those are foundational things, but it's kind of like, you kind of go on an odyssey yourself, to find that
Mhm.
out.
Yeah.
There's some of life is a mystery, but there's not anything that can't be revealed to us if we search it out.
I'll tell you something else that was very powerful to me. It was almost as powerful as, what I just said.
Yeah,
Not quite, but almost.
yeah.
Was when I got in the pain management program. This was Dr. Peter Prescott. He wrote this beautiful book, Conquer Chronic Pain: An Innovative Mind-Body Approach. He
Hmm.
passed away in 2016, but he left us this beautiful book. And then I wrote the kind of companion to it, The Way Through Chronic Pain: Tools to Reclaim Your Healing Power.
Okay.
And anyway, so I get in his, I'm detoxing off all these medications, and they kind of wheeled me into the into the classroom. There's 20 other people pretty much like me,
Yeah.
in chronic pain, and he says, "What are you doing to contribute to your pain?" And I was like, in my head, I didn't say anything, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you what happened inside my head was like, I can't believe he just said that in this room with all these chronic pain people. Like, we're all having this victim mentality. I certainly had a victim mentality. And I
Yeah.
was like, what's he talking about? The pain's doing it to me. And so I walked in there in the victim mode. And the first question that he asked was so powerful, because by the question, what are you doing to contribute to your pain? All
Hmm.
of a sudden, he took me from victimhood to empowerment, because
Yeah.
he opened the door. He helped me reimagine that
Yeah.
I actually had power
Yeah.
in that space where I had no idea that I had power before he even asked the question.
Yeah. What
Wow.
a difference maker that is.
Yeah.
What a difference maker that is.
He got
Yeah.
my attention. That
Yeah.
was the first thing out of his mouth in that classroom, and he got my attention. I was like, okay, what is this guy up to? Because he's got something going on.
Hey, I like that. You know what? And it's those questions, because you know what, I really fundamentally I think that sometimes it's that someone asked the right question.
Mm-hmm.
Like if somebody asks the right question and then you start asking yourself, other people,
Mm-hmm.
different questions, right? And it leads to a different answer. Just like you kicked us off here and you said, hey, those two things that you ask, everybody has a perspective and a scope of practice,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's two questions that you're gonna ask when you come in that empower you,
That's right. Mm-hmm.
right? So what can they offer me? What's the benefits? What can they bring to the table,
Mm-hmm.
in that offering? How can they help me? And what can't they?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Manage our expectations.
You know, it's so interesting because I remember having this vision of doctors and healers as these big, this big thing relative to me.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what those questions do? They keep everybody right-sized in the room.
Yep.
And
Right-sized in the room.
That's really important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, Elizabeth, I feel like the time has gone so quickly. Can you believe it? Oh my gosh. I am so glad that you were here. But before we leave, before we get out of here, I have to ask you, what would be the very best piece of advice that you would leave the audience if you haven't already shared? You've got so many great things that you've shared with us today, but give us that great piece of advice thing that you would share or say to the listening audience today.
Well, we talked about the greatest healer lives within, and anybody listening who's dealing with a health issue, and pretty much everybody I know is carrying some kind of trauma. You know what? Don't be alone with it. Ask for help.
Yep.
Because there's people out there that would love to help and can help, and please don't be alone with that stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're suffering, and so is everyone else, because the energy of it. We really, if we really want to change the world and heal the world, we have to start with ourselves.
Absolutely.
I'm not the only one that said that, but I'm putting it in context of what Resmaa said.
Mm-hmm.
We have to start here, change ourselves, and everybody else benefits, right? So
absolutely.
That's what I would say. Please ask for help. Yeah.
Good stuff. Don't do this alone. Oh, I love it. Elizabeth, you have been a jewel. Tell people where they can find you. Where can they connect with you? And we'll make sure we get in the show notes as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You can find me on my website, which is Elizabeth with a hyphen, and then my last name, Kipp, KIPP.com, Elizabeth-Kipp.com. You got to put the hyphen in there because ElizabethKipp.com is a web designer and a photographer who's amazing, but she's not me. So you have to put the dash in. And I've got all my social media on there and lots of free resources, lots of blogs, all kinds of, ancestral clearing prayers, and there's all kinds of stuff on the website. So
nice. Lots of stuff. You guys make sure that you tune in. You go over Elizabeth-Kipp.com. Make sure that you find her, check her out, load up on the resources, but definitely dive in. If you guys need the help, trauma, ancestral trauma, historical trauma specialist, she is there. Stress management, those of you who may be in corporate spaces dealing with that stress and anxiety and need some help clearing, she's got some tools. She can take you through some techniques, some things that can help you get unsuspended, no burnout. She's got the goods, guys. Make sure that you check her out. Oh, it has been my pleasure having you in the lab today. My pleasure. Thank you for being with us. Well, you guys know how we do. I always hate to close the show, but make sure that if you have not subscribed, make sure you click the bell so that you can get a notification for the next time we drop an episode. New episodes come out every Friday, and you don't want to miss one. And make sure if this has resonated with you, share it with a friend, share it with those in your family who might need this. Because I'm telling you, the resources and the information, we are all about making sure that people know that change is just a choice. And as Elizabeth shared today, you don't have to do this alone. So make sure that you share it with a friend. We look forward to seeing you here next week. This has been MG with the Reimagine You Lab podcast. I'll see you next week.
Thanks so much.